If you go back a decade or two in football, you'll see football pitches bursting with individual talent. Players that lit up every pitch they stepped on and made us happy to watch the game that we fell in love with. But these days, many argue that this is no longer the case. We call football the beautiful game, but sadly, for many, that beauty seems to be fading away. As someone who recreates iconic sports moments for a living, I've noticed that my work is focused on players that are mostly coming to the end of their career or are no longer around anymore. When I think about players who make us fall in love with football, the ones that play with a smile on the face, and the ones that express themselves with the passion through every touch, there are very few current players that come to mind. One of my favourite players in recent years is Roberto Firmino, obviously because of his influence at Liverpool, but sadly, players like Firmino stand out to me as potentially the last of a dying breed of footballers. To understand why players like Ronaldinho and Firmino just mentioned are so important to me and the footballing world, we need to look back at their roots in Brazil. Brazil has produced some of the most gifted players to ever play the game. From Pelé to R9, one of my favourite strikers of all time, and Ronaldinho, of course, who I used to practice his skills after school in the garden for hours on end. What makes these players so special is their ability to mix technical brilliance with a unique sense of joy. These players don't just play the game with the feet, they play the game with the heart and the soul. It's built into their DNA to be creative on a football pitch. Football in Brazil isn't just a sport, it's a way of life. Playing football is a way of expressing yourself. And to anyone who's played FIFA Street back in the day, you'll know exactly what I am talking about. Right now, we're living in an age of football where the game has evolved significantly. The game has become faster and more tactical and more about pressing and fitting into a system than ever before, with players and managers focusing more on efficiency than creativity. Rodri, for example, winning the Ballon d'Or last year is a perfect example of how systematic, efficient play is now at the forefront of the game. I am by no means saying that either approach is positive or negative. This is simply an observation of what I believe to be a massive shift in the way the game has been played and the effect that that might have on how future generations enjoy the game of football. This is where players like Bobby Firmino were different. Firmino's role at Liverpool FC wasn't just to score goals, even though he did that quite often. His real strength was his link-up play and bringing the entire team together. Ironically, he was nicknamed the System by Liverpool fans, even though I believe the systematic approach to football is killing this creativity. Firmino would create opportunities from his ability to take risks and to play with freedom. Firmino's creativity was the catalyst for opportunities to create chances and win a game. And he did all of that with a smile on his face. He was a player who desperately wanted possession of the ball, just like Ronaldinho, Kaká, et al. Players like the ones I've just mentioned bring a sense of flair and a touch of freedom to the game. And to me, they represent a dying breed of footballers that played the game for the love of the game rather than for a paycheck or any individual accolades. When we think of Brazilians who bring joy to the game, we naturally think about Ronaldinho. Ronaldinho was the master of expression, the man who made the beautiful game look easy. He had the flicks, the tricks, the no-look goals, the elastico, and the ability to finish from anywhere on the pitch. He wasn't just tricky, he was tricky and effective. And he made the impossible seem effortless. These types of players were not afraid to take risks, to try something different, or to pull off something that would make fans gasp in disbelief. That's what makes Brazilian players, and I believe football, so special. They play without fear, they play with creativity, and they play with an understanding that football is supposed to be enjoyed by both the players and the fans watching in the stands. I fear deeply that players are more scared to lose than they are excited to win in the modern game.
But this robotic nature of not leaving our positions, of basically being micromanaged within an inch of our lives, of not having any freedom to take a risk to go and try and win a football match, it's becoming an illness in the game, it's becoming a disease in the game. And I think ultimately, think about Pep Guardiola and his teams over the last 10 years, that's what his teams do. But we're seeing poor imitations of that across the board now.
Players like Ronaldinho, Firmino, even Neymar are becoming increasingly rare. Of course, Lamal at Barcelona and Vinicius Jr are a few that come to mind with a similar flair. But other than them two, I struggle to name many more. Maybe it's just my lack of football knowledge at the moment, but if you go back 10, 15 years, you can name players endlessly with the creativity that I'm talking about.
I think there's always a degree of nostalgia with these things, and I speak as someone that played a zillion years ago.
What? Alan's era of players was ridiculous compared to now. Coaching now is completely different. I think I don't want to call it robots, but I think there's now players playing in these forward positions who are just getting to the byline, coming back, and then passing in and keeping the ball. So I'm not saying the players are not as good now, but I'm just saying that they are wired up differently to suit the tactical plan of what the manager wants.
Messi, Kaká, Iniesta, Xavi, Pirlo, Dennis Bergkamp, Thierry Henry, Totti, Luka Modric. I mean, you can list these players continuously without hardly stumbling on your words, whereas now you struggle to think of 5 creative players that play the game with the same flair. Modern football has become a lot more structured, with a stronger emphasis on efficiency, and I believe that a lot of the individual brilliance that we see in Brazilian football and in a lot of the players I've just mentioned is being diluted. The joyful player, the one who expresses himself through skill and creativity, is becoming much harder to find in the modern game. Of course, there are still players of excellent quality and players who score goals for fun, like Erling Haaland and Mohamed Salah. But the point I'm trying to make here is one of personality and passion, I think, rather than winning ability. As someone who paints, I'm always inspired by creativity in all its forms, not just in sport, but in life in general. And this is where Roberto Firmino, or the concept of the joyful footballer, became my inspiration. I painted Bobby as a tribute to the type of player that expresses himself freely. Someone whose style of play is as much about artistry as it is about athleticism and winning. Painting him was a way for me to honour that artistry. And that is why we need players who remind us of why we fell in love with football in the first place. We need more players to play with a smile on the face, who express themselves by taking risks, and who can inspire the next generation to do the same.
I sent a quote from Unai Emery into the WhatsApp group. His quote was, "The game has become so tactical now that strategy alone is no longer enough. More and more we will see that success will rely on the creativity of individual players, those who can dribble past their opponents and create moments that are more about skill than by positional action."
Football is more about just winning or losing. It's about joy, it's about creativity, and it's about the beautiful game. And once more, I'm not trying to say current players aren't capable of extraordinary achievements and accolades. This is simply an observation and a hope that lifelong football fans like myself don't continue to fall out of love with a part of the game that I believe is very important, and a part of the game that is fun for us to watch. When kids watch players like Ronaldinho, they don't just see a football player. They see someone who is trying to do new things, to express themselves, and to enjoy the process. It's no wonder that these players mentioned are still huge role models for young players coming through, especially those in Brazil, where football runs so deep. Their style of play encourages kids to take risks and be bold and to express their creativity on the pitch. And that's something I believe we need more of in the game. And who knows what the reason is for this slump in creativity. Maybe technology like VAR has transformed the game into something more technical in order to reduce error. But I'm afraid in a bid to improve fairness, we may just be losing the essence of what makes football so special in the first place. I painted Bobby Firmino as a tribute to the legacy and style of play that he and other players will leave behind. He's a footballer who plays for the love of the game, who expresses himself through creativity, and who brings joy to everyone who watches him. And I hope that through this video, you've been able to understand how much football needs that joy today. We may not see many players like this again. If you like this video, you may also like this deep dive right here. And if you want to download any of my artwork for free as a phone wallpaper, hit the link in the description below to see the full collection, and you'll see plenty of the legends that I've mentioned in this video. Have a boss day.